In Africa, there are 54 countries. Out of these, 14 countries use all three Pan-African colors in their flags, and 48 countries use at least one of these three colors, while only 2 countries don't use any of these. These colors are deeply valued by African countries and have been used by many African leaders to symbolize the continent. Red, green, and yellow have become known as the Pan-African colors. So why do these colors matter? There are many videos that explain how Ethiopia introduced this combination of colors and how other countries adopted them as a sign of respect and strength for a nation that was never colonized. I am going to take a different approach. Instead of delving into the history of why these colors matter, I am going to prove why the Pan-African colors are the best fit for the African continent. By the end, you will have a clear picture of why these colors truly matter. My name is Rajabu Majidi, and I am on a mission to become an expert on Africa. And my hope is that we can become experts together. Welcome. Red is the most painful, and yet it is the color that stitches the whole continent together. Africa's history is marked by many liberation movements where countless individuals laid down their lives for freedom. The mid-90s was the peak of these liberation movements, with approximately over 1 million people dying in the struggle for freedom, from Ghana's independent movement in 1957 to Namibia's last fight against colonialism in 1990. In this period, there were multiple wars like the Angolan War of Independence and the Algerian War of Independence that claimed 1 million African lives. There were other bloodsheds and wars across the continent. Red serves as a reminder of a shared history of struggle across the continent, symbolizing the bloodshed in the fight against oppression. Politically, red also represents the ongoing fight for inequality, justice, and human rights. For instance, the economic freedom fighters in South Africa use red as their primary color to symbolize their struggle against economic inequality. In traditional cultures, red is not just a symbol of war and blood. In many African societies, red is a prominent color. In traditional ceremonies and rituals, it is often associated with life force and the ancestors. Some African societies believe red has protective qualities, used in decorations to ward off evil spirits and bad luck. In other African cultures, red represents the spiritual world. Green is the easiest color to justify. Even when viewed from space, Africa's lush vegetation and forest appears green in the central and southern region of the continent, which might be the reason why people outside the continent think of Africa as a country with trees and Tarzan with his family of monkeys. And those people are right. Not the part about Tarzan or the part of Africa being a country, but the other part about Africa having a lot of trees. The African continent is home to vast grasslands, forest, and agricultural land, with 60% land being arable. The Congo Basin has the second largest tropical rainforest in the world, spanning 6 countries. The Congolian rainforest absorbs about 1.5 billion tons of CO2 annually, which is about 4% of all the world's fossil fuel emissions. African governments have projects like the Great Green Wall that aim to restore 100 hectares of currently degraded land. That's roughly about the size of Egypt. Green also represents the diverse landscape throughout the continent, including mountains, rivers, and waterfalls, all which will play a part in the renewable energy projects in the future. The concept of yellow representing wealth in Africa is very tricky to prove. While the obvious examples are the vast wealth of the continent's resources, which has played a part in ancient African civilizations, from the Egyptian Empire, who used gold for starters, then the later kingdoms of Mali under Mansa Musa, regarded as the wealthiest individual in history. It is recorded that in 1324, he had taken a vast amount of gold to Mecca pilgrimage that caused a significant devaluation of gold in the regions he passed through due to the stack amount of gold he carried. There are other obvious examples that can be found in our current time, where Africa produces 25% of the world gold in 2021, 2022, and 2023. There are many more other valuable resources in vast amounts within the continent. This is all obvious observations that I can make to claim the continent's wealth and resources. But with all this obvious wealth, the African continent has not fulfilled its potential. This is the richest country in the world by resources. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the poorest countries in the world. South Africa, a resource-rich nation, suffers from inequality and job shortages. Despite the wealth, the continent is in a state of poverty and hunger. This is like having an excellent house with a world-class kitchen that has all the latest appliances, and yet the house has no food to feed the people inside. Sorry for the kitchen analogy. I spent most of my days working in a restaurant. But what use is the resources if its people won't benefit? Is the continent really wealthy if the people are poor? In terms of abundance of wealth, the continent has, but our people have not. I know this is going against the promise that I made to you about the video, but I am a realist. I will acknowledge the bad as much as the good. Of course, there are some African countries that are overperforming, but they are too little in such a big continent. So then, does yellow truly matter in the Pan-African colors? And the answer to that is a big, glorious yes. Remember, yellow represents wealth and bright future. With a youthful population and more accessible education, the continent is hopefully heading towards a brighter future. With advancement in technology, improved healthcare, and an entrepreneurial spirit to solve the problems constraining the African continent. For example, Morocco and South Africa are investing heavily in solar power projects. These projects tap into the abundant energy provided by the bright golden sun that covers the entire continent. The Sahara Desert, for instance, gets more than 4,000 hours of sunshine every year, making it one of the sunniest places on Earth. Africa's future, literally, shines brighter than any other continent. Red, green, and yellow. So why do these colors matter, you ask? As a civilization, we build and form our identities based on values, materials, or in this case, symbols which we think best represents us. No colors can better describe the pain, riches, and beauty of this continent. Red, yellow, and green represent the strength of Ethiopia, a country that was never colonized. They represent the liberation of our continent. The three colors symbolize Africa's brutal history, enormous wealth, and exceptional beauty. The best and the worst of Africa. These three colors matter because deep down in the African soil, it is painted red, green, and yellow.